February 13, 2017. Kuala Lumpur International Airport is alive with travelers and noise a typical busy morning. Among the crowd, Kim Jong-nam, the older half-brother of North Korea's leader, quietly heads for his flight to China, unnoticed by almost everyone. But two young women have their eyes locked on him. They move in, seeming playful until one covers his eyes from behind, and the other reaches out in a split-second move. It looks like a prank. But within seconds, Kim Jong-nam is stumbling, pain and panic on his face as he seeks help. What just happened in that terminal? Who are these women? And why did they choose Kim Jong-nam? Was this random or something much darker? This is more than a murder, it's a web of intrigue and deception that will shake the world. In February 2017, Kim Jong-nam, the older half-brother of North Korea's leader, is at the Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia, ready to fly back to China where he lives. He walks in like any regular traveler, just looking for his flight. But what Kim Jong-nam doesn't know is that two women are waiting for him. One is Indonesian. Her name is Siti Aisyah. The other is Vietnamese. Her name is Don Thai Vong. Security cameras catch both of them following Kim as soon as he enters. Then, out of nowhere, the two women walk up behind him. One of them covers his eyes, almost like a prank. But this isn't a joke. They quickly rub something onto his face and run away. Kim Jong-nam reacts immediately. He feels pain and something burning on his face. He rushes to airport security, pointing to his face, clearly in distress. He knows something is wrong. He thinks it's poison. Security guards help him to the medical team, but things get worse fast. He becomes dizzy, feels sick, and can barely walk. The medics do their best, but within an hour, Kim Jong-nam is dead. The news of Kim Jong-nam's death spreads quickly, and the world is left wondering how and why this happened in broad daylight in a busy airport. Suddenly, everyone was watching Malaysia and waiting to see what the authorities would do next. Malaysian police jumped into action, starting a full investigation right away. Forensic experts soon confirmed what many feared. Kim Jong-nam had been poisoned. But this wasn't any ordinary poison, it was VX, one of the deadliest chemical weapons ever made. VX is so dangerous that it's banned in almost every country in the world. Just a tiny amount can kill in minutes. Now that the cause of death was clear, police focused on finding out who did it. Luckily, the airport security cameras had caught everything. It was obvious the two women seen in the footage were behind the attack. After the attack, the cameras showed both women hurrying to the bathroom to wash their hands. This was an important clue. They seemed to know just how dangerous VX was. Experts say that if you wash your hands for at least 15 minutes, the poison usually won't get through your skin. But if VX touches your eyes, nose, or mouth, it's deadly. It enters the blood almost instantly. That's exactly what happened to Kim Jong-nam. The Malaysian police now had their suspects, and they were moving fast. But before we dive deeper into the investigation, let's step back and look at the Kim family, one of the most secretive and powerful families in the world. It all started with Kim Il-sung, the founder of North Korea and Kim Jong-un's grandfather. After he died, his son Kim Jong-il took over and continued building the family's image as something almost holy. In North Korea, people were taught that the Kim family was chosen by fate, and anyone who disagreed learned the hard way. The Kims isolated North Korea and ruled with total control. Kim Jong-il, the father, married a famous actress, and from that marriage, Kim Jong-nam was born the same man who was later assassinated in Malaysia. As the oldest son, Kim Jong-nam was expected to be the next leader. But things changed when Kim Jong-il married again, this time to a famous dancer, and they had another son, Kim Jong-un, 10 years younger than Kim Jong-nam. Kim Jong-un's mother was determined that her son would inherit power. She worked hard behind the scenes, using her influence to push Kim Jong-un forward. It helped that Kim Jong-nam had problems with the North Korean system. In 2001, he was caught in Japan trying to visit Tokyo Disneyland with a fake passport. For North Korea, this was a huge embarrassment, especially because Disney is seen as a symbol of America, North Korea's enemy. Some even say Kim Jong-un's mother tipped off Japanese authorities to make her rival look bad. After this scandal, Kim Jong-il lost trust in his oldest son. Kim Jong-nam was quietly pushed aside, and he eventually left North Korea for China, wanting nothing to do with the regime. He settled there, living away from politics. When Kim Jong-il died in 2011, Kim Jong-un became leader at just 25 years old. Many doubted he could handle the job, but he quickly showed he was even tougher than his father. He changed things, improved some areas, and tried to win people over, but he also removed anyone who threatened his power, even having his own uncle executed. Kim Jong-un made it clear, challenge him, and you're done. While Kim Jong-un ruled North Korea, Kim Jong-nam traveled around East and Southeast Asia, living a quiet life. But sometimes he would show up in interviews and make comments against his brother's regime. And maybe this is what made him a target and set the stage for what happened in Kuala Lumpur. Kim Jong-nam didn't keep quiet about his views. In interviews, he said that North Korea shouldn't be ruled by just one family, and that the country would be better off if it opened up to the outside world. He also questioned how his younger brother came to power, saying it wasn't truly legitimate. These comments didn't sit well with Kim Jong-un. Even though he never said it publicly, the North Korean regime saw Kim Jong-nam as a threat. He wasn't just any critic, he was the oldest son, and in a system where power is inherited, that made him dangerous. Other countries, especially China, noticed this too. Kim Jong-nam was living in China, and while North Korea and China have a strong relationship, China still wants to keep its own control. If Kim Jong-un ever lost favor with China, his brother could be used against him. For Kim Jong-un, his brother's very existence was a risk. But killing him in China would be risky. North Korea depends on China, and any trouble with them could be a disaster. So the regime had to wait for the right moment, somewhere outside of China. There were even reports of failed assassination attempts before Malaysia. According to South Korean intelligence, Kim Jong-nam once wrote a letter to his brother, asking him to stop the attacks and promising he didn't want power. But it didn't matter. As long as Kim Jong-nam was alive, Kim Jong-un saw him as a problem. Finally, North Korean agents found their chance in Kuala Lumpur airport. The assassination succeeded, but North Korea denied any involvement. Less than a week after Kim Jong-nam's assassination, the Malaysian police chief held a press conference. He announced that the two women seen in the airport's security footage had been arrested: Don Thay Hong, a 28-year-old from Vietnam, and Siti Aisyah, a 25-year-old from Indonesia. He said the investigation was still ongoing. The police also revealed that there were 8 other suspects, all connected to North Korea. Some of these suspects were actually North Korean embassy employees, because Malaysia was one of the few countries with a North Korean embassy. 4 of these suspects were seen at the airport during the assassination, and they quickly left Malaysia right after. The other 4 stayed in Malaysia, but police believe they were also involved in the planning. We'll come back to these 8 suspects later. For now, the focus was on the 2 women who carried out the attack. After their arrest, the news reached the girls' families. Both families were shocked. Siti Aisyah's family in Indonesia couldn't believe it. Her father was at a funeral when he got the news. He came home to find out that his daughter had been arrested in Malaysia, accused of murdering the brother of North Korea's leader. He said his daughter had a tough life, moving from job to job, but he never thought she could be involved in something like this. The same disbelief hit Don Thay Hong's family in Vietnam. They knew she was trying to become an actress and was working in a restaurant, but the idea that she could be involved in a political assassination was unthinkable. Her father insisted she was a good person and couldn't imagine her doing something like this. While their families tried to make sense of the news, the world's attention turned to North Korea. The North Korean government denied any involvement, but almost everyone believed they were behind the assassination, acting on the orders of Kim Jong-un. As we mentioned earlier, Malaysian authorities identified 8 North Korean suspects connected to the assassination. 4 of them were at the airport when it happened, but they quickly left Malaysia right after. The other 4 stayed behind, and 3 of them were arrested. The first arrested suspect was a chemist named Ri Jong-kol, believed to be the one who made the poison. The second was a North Korean embassy official in Malaysia. The third was an employee of North Korea's airline. All 3 were held for questioning about their roles in the plot, especially the chemist, since making a deadly poison like VX requires expert knowledge. These arrests caused a huge reaction. The North Korean ambassador in Malaysia held a press conference outside the embassy, accusing Malaysia of blaming North Korea without real evidence and demanding the release of the arrested men. In response, Malaysia expelled the North Korean ambassador from the country. Things quickly escalated. North Korea then banned all Malaysians in North Korea, including the Malaysian ambassador and embassy staff, from leaving the country, effectively turning them into hostages. The diplomatic crisis grew tense in the days that followed. After some tough negotiations, both countries reached a deal. Malaysia agreed to release the North Korean suspects, and North Korea allowed the Malaysians in their country to go home. North Korea also requested that Kim Jong-nam's body be sent back to them, and Malaysia agreed, wanting to keep their citizens safe. Once the North Korean suspects were released, they were immediately flown back home. After Malaysian authorities let the 3 North Korean suspects go, only the 2 women, Siti Aisyah and Don The Hong, were left to face charges. Both women were assigned separate law firms in Malaysia to defend them. Their lawyers started digging into how these 2 young women ended up on trial for murder, because the story just didn't make sense. Neither Siti nor Don had any link to North Korea or any criminal background. When the trial began, one of the first witnesses was a government chemical weapons expert named Raja. He explained to the court just how deadly VX poison is. It's the most dangerous nerve agent known, and even a single drop can kill a person if it gets into their blood. Raja said that just touching the skin isn't always enough to kill someone. If you wash it off quickly, you might survive. But if VX gets into your eyes, nose, or mouth, it's almost always fatal. He also revealed that traces of the poison were found on both Siti's and Don's clothes. This explained why Kim Jong-nam died, but the 2 women didn't. They must have washed their hands quickly enough to avoid the poison entering their bodies. The defense lawyers argued that such a deadly substance couldn't be handled by ordinary people, and that the real masterminds had already been allowed to leave Malaysia. They claimed the 2 women had been tricked, not knowing what they were actually doing. Why should they be held responsible when the people who planned and prepared everything had been released? The prosecutors insisted that the 2 women knew they were using poison because the camera footage showed the women keeping their hands away from their faces and going straight to the bathroom to wash up, clear signs they knew the substance was dangerous. But the defense pushed back. If they really knew how dangerous it was, would they have risked touching it and getting it on their own skin and clothes? That didn't make sense. So, what's the real story? How did these 2 women end up at the center of one of the world's most shocking assassinations? Let's start with the story of Siti Aisyah, the Indonesian woman. After her arrest, Siti told her lawyers everything. She explained that the police had suddenly burst into her apartment and arrested her. She was shocked, confused, and had no idea what was happening. During the interrogation, the police asked where she was on February 13th, the day of the assassination. Siti replied that she had been at the airport. They asked who she was with, and she said, "My boss, Mr. Chung." When they wanted to contact him, she tried to call, but his phone was off. That's when the police started pressing her. "Are you a spy? What did you do to kill the man at the airport?" Siti's confusion only grew. She insisted, "I didn't kill anyone. I didn't do anything." But then they told her, "You're involved in the murder of the North Korean leader's brother." City thought they were joking. She said she was filming a video, that she was working with a company that made prank videos. She truly believed she was part of a team making harmless content for social media. Her lawyer had to break it to her. This is serious. Someone died. Those people you worked with weren't making prank videos. They set you up for murder. And you got caught in the middle. Siti Aisyah's story is just as heartbreaking. Life in Indonesia was tough for her. She struggled to find steady work, and after a lot of searching, she finally landed a job at a small clothing factory. The job was hard, with long hours and low pay. Eventually, she married the factory owner, and when she was only 17, she had a child. But her marriage quickly fell apart. Her husband left her and took their child with him. Feeling like she had no future in Indonesia, Siti decided to try her luck in Malaysia, hoping for a better life. But things didn't get any easier. She ended up working at a massage center, a job she really didn't like. Desperate for a way out, she was willing to take almost any opportunity that came her way. That's when she met a man named James, one of the 8 North Korean suspects, and most likely not his real name. Siti met James through her work. He claimed he was Japanese and said he worked for a video production company, looking for girls to star in their videos. He offered her a job, and with nothing to lose, Siti agreed. The same thing happened with Don Thai Hong. Don told her lawyer that she used to work as a waitress at a restaurant in Vietnam for 3 years, but she always dreamed of becoming an actress or a celebrity. She often posted photos online and sometimes worked as a model to earn extra money. One day, a colleague from the restaurant called and asked if Don wanted to work with a company that made prank and funny videos. Don was interested, so she went to meet a man, one of the North Korean suspects who later fled the country. He introduced himself as Mr. Y. He offered her $1,000 a month to appear in these videos, a huge amount for her, and it was a chance to be on camera, just as she wanted. What's more, Don had already appeared in prank videos that were filmed months before the assassination. These videos, which can still be found online, became part of her legal defense. Her lawyers argued that she genuinely believed she was taking part in another harmless prank. Both women's stories had a similar thread. They were ordinary people with big dreams, tricked by strangers promising easy money and fame. Neither had any idea they were being used as pawns in an international assassination plot. According to the story of Siti and Don, each was recruited months before the assassination by different men representing 2 separate companies. Remember, this recruitment happened well before the operation. Over those months, they were trained under the guise of prank videos. For example, this man James would give Siti baby oil, put it on her hands, and tell her the prank was to sneak up behind strangers and smear it over their eyes as a surprise. Siti asked if that is supposed to be funny, and James replied that these things are funny in Japan, and asked her to do exactly what he says. James paid Siti $100 for each filming day. To her, it was good money for work that was a bit embarrassing but simple and quick, and definitely better than the filthy place she had been working before. So she started doing what she believed were harmless pranks, when in fact they were rehearsals for an assassination. They continued like this for months, pretending to film prank videos. One thing that helped Siti's lawyers later was that she used to film and post her daily life on social media, including footage with James videos where he appears clearly on camera. But there was a problem. James barely spoke English, which is how a new person entered the picture, someone called Mr. Chang, another of the 4 who later fled the airport. His role was mainly as an interpreter. He spoke Indonesian, Japanese, English, and likely Korean too, suggesting he might have been an intelligence operative. James and Mr. Chang promised Siti she would travel to different countries to shoot more pranks, become a famous actress, and make even more money. Siti had already begun imagining this new life and was prepared to do anything they asked. On the other side, Don's experience followed a very similar pattern. She was recruited by a man known as Mr. Y, one of the 4 North Korean suspects, Mr. I started training her to do pranks, but he took things even further. He made the pranks look and feel real. Some of these videos, which are still online, show Doan pulling off pranks that seem completely authentic, not just staged practice. As time went on, Mr. I introduced Doan to another man he called his boss. When she asked his name, Mr. I told her to call him Hanamori. After that, Mr. I focused on teaching her one specific prank, the covering the eyes prank, just like James did with City. He even gave her baby oil to put on her hands and took her to an airport in Vietnam to practice, wanting her to get used to the airport environment. There's actual footage from Vietnamese airport cameras showing Doan performing these pranks. In one video, you can see her approach a man from behind and cover his eyes, while someone films from a distance, most likely Mr. I. Afterward, Doan apologizes, saying, "Oh, sorry, I thought you were someone I know." All of this was part of her training, making her believe she was simply taking part in another harmless prank. When Doan's lawyers later reviewed her message history with Mr. I, they discovered evidence of detailed coaching. In one exchange, Mr. I criticized her for not keeping her hands firmly over the target's eyes during a previous prank, mentioning that his boss was unhappy with her performance. He stressed the importance of precision, instructing her to hold her hands tightly over the target's eyes for several seconds to ensure a better reaction on camera. Doan acknowledged his instructions and agreed to improve. The following day, they filmed another prank at the Vietnam airport. This time, Doan performed exactly as she had been coached, holding her hands over the target's eyes for longer. Mr. I later confirmed that her performance met his expectations. These interactions showed a clear pattern of training and preparation. The criminals were carefully instructing Doan so that when the time came to use the poison, she would follow their directions perfectly, maximizing the chances of a successful attack. During this time, North Korean intelligence was closely monitoring Kim Jong-nam, waiting for the perfect opportunity. When they discovered he would be traveling to Malaysia, they made the decision to carry out the attack during his return trip. Given their resources, finding out his flight details likely wasn't difficult. In the days leading up to Kim Jong-nam's arrival, the operatives began preparing the two women right at Kuala Lumpur Airport. City spent 3 days at the airport practicing so-called pranks in the exact location where the attack would take place. She even posted videos from the airport, providing her lawyers with crucial evidence, since it would make little sense for a criminal to record and share footage from the crime scene and their own training. Similarly, Doan documented her own activities online, sharing her travels and daily life. Both women left behind a clear digital trail, which investigators later described as a digital footprint. This evidence, ironically, did more to support their innocence than to prove their guilt. On February 13, 2017, the day of the operation, both teams were in position. Surveillance footage captured two North Korean operatives, Hanamori, identified by his purple shirt, and another man using the name Oh Jong-gil, both believed to be intelligence officers and later among the 4 who quickly left the country. The other 2 operatives, known as Mr. Wadi and Mr. Chung, were each assigned to guide one of the women. At the airport, City was seen sitting in a cafe with Mr. Chung, who emphasized that today's filming was especially important and mentioned that there would be other participants involved. City appeared relaxed, laughing and chatting, giving the impression that she was either completely at ease or genuinely unaware of what was about to happen, believing it was just another prank video. At the same time, Mr. I stayed with Doan, also stressing the importance of the day's shoot and telling her there would be new people involved, further convincing her that this was all part of a regular video production. Both women were carefully manipulated, set up to carry out the attack without realizing the deadly reality behind it. At around 9 a.m., Kim Jong-nam arrived at the airport, preparing to board his flight back to China. The group involved in the operation was already in position. Hanamori, positioned directly across from the main entrance, was the first to notice Kim Jong-nam's arrival and quietly informed the rest of the team. As Kim moved through the terminal, City and Mr. Chang waited out of sight behind a nearby pillar, ready to act as soon as they received confirmation from Hanamori that their target was in place. Mr. Chang instructed City to target the man in the gray coat, Kim Jong-nam, who stood out in the crowd. He handed her a vial containing the toxic substance, disguised as baby oil, and carefully applied it to her hands. As Kim Jong-nam walked past a pillar, City followed closely, preparing to carry out what she believed was another harmless prank. At the same time, Mr. Y and Don were positioned nearby. Mr. Y had already placed the same poison on Don's hands, instructing her to watch City and repeat her actions. Don observed as City reached out and covered Kim Jong-nam's eyes from behind. Startled and confused, Kim turned around, not understanding why someone had touched his face. The plan relied on using two women in order to ensure that enough of the poison would make contact with Kim's face, guaranteeing that the deadly substance would enter his bloodstream and the assassination would be effective. After both women had come into contact with Kim Jong-nam, he quickly sensed that something was wrong. Distressed and frightened, he turned sharply, realizing he was under attack. Meanwhile, the two women, gripped by panic, rushed off in different directions, each heading to a separate restroom to wash their hands, believing the substance was harmless baby oil. When they re-emerged, they instinctively looked for the men who had recruited them. City sought out Mr. Chang, and Don searched for Mr. Y, but both handlers had already disappeared. At the same time, four men involved in orchestrating the attack, identified as Mr. Y, Mr. Chang, Hanamori, and Oh Jong-gil, were caught on security cameras entering airport bathrooms, where they changed their clothes and altered their appearances. Afterward, these four reconnected with two other North Koreans, an embassy employee and an airline worker, both of whom would later be detained and then released. The embassy and airline officials helped arrange for the operatives' swift departure from the airport. The four main planners left the scene appearing relaxed and pleased, gathering their belongings and boarding a plane out of Malaysia. Their escape route took them first to Indonesia, then Dubai, onward to China, and finally back to North Korea. As a result, the primary architects of the operation managed to evade capture, while the three men initially arrested the chemist, the embassy official, and the airline employee were later released following diplomatic pressure from North Korea. As for James, the man who first approached City and posed as a Japanese recruiter, he vanished without a trace and was never seen at the airport during the assassination. In the end, the case in Malaysia centered solely on these two women. For their lawyers, it was clear that neither woman had any motive to commit such a crime, and it made little sense for all the blame to fall on them when they had been manipulated and deceived. The stakes were extremely high if convicted of murder in Malaysia. The punishment was death by execution. The lawyers viewed this outcome as deeply unfair. However, the prosecution maintained a very different stance. They argued that, regardless of the circumstances, these two women were the ones who physically carried out the attack and should face the consequences. The prosecution insisted that both women were fully aware that they were handling poison. Their case relied heavily on security camera footage, which showed the women walking with their hands held away from their bodies, behavior the prosecution interpreted as evidence that they knew the substance was dangerous and wanted to avoid contact with their skin or clothing. This footage became a central part of the prosecution's argument in court. In contrast, the women explained that their hands had simply felt oily and had a strange smell, leading them to wash up right away to avoid getting the substance on themselves or their clothes. But the prosecution didn't care. It was obvious they needed a scapegoat, someone to pay for such a brazen assassination on Malaysian soil. They weren't going to let the case end without any convictions. The defense teams were fully committed to proving the women's innocence, investing significant effort in their case. They collected every possible piece of evidence, from digital records to video footage, and carefully documented both women's backgrounds prior to their involvement with the North Korean recruiters. For 2 long years, the defense lawyers worked tirelessly in court, while Siti and Doan remained in detention, facing the uncertainty of their future. Despite their efforts, the situation seemed bleak at the start. Throughout the trial, the judge made remarks that revealed his skepticism about the women's claims and the idea that the incident was just a prank. He repeatedly questioned whether what happened at the airport could be considered humorous, pointing out that a true prank involves fun, which was clearly absent from this case. His comments suggested he wasn't convinced by the defense's arguments, casting a shadow over the proceedings. On March 10, 2019, events in the courtroom took an unexpected turn. Prosecutors announced that all charges against Siti Aisyah were being dropped, and no new charges would be filed. The judge, taken by surprise, was left with no option but to order her immediate release. After spending 2 years in custody, Siti walked out of the courtroom smiling, finally free. Meanwhile, Doan Thai Hong case moved forward unchanged. The charges against her remained, largely because of strong lobbying by the Indonesian government that led to Siti's release. In contrast, Vietnam made no significant diplomatic effort to secure Doan's freedom, likely due to their ongoing relationship with North Korea. Doan's next court hearing took place on April 1, 2019. That day, the atmosphere outside the courthouse was tense as journalists gathered, all waiting to hear the result. The presence of Vietnamese embassy officials, including the ambassador, highlighted the significance of the case for Vietnam. In Malaysia, strict rules kept cameras and reporters out of the courtroom, so the media waited outside, eager for any updates. The mood shifted when Doan appeared from the courthouse, visibly relieved and smiling. Although she remained in custody and was not released on the spot like Siti, it was clear that the outcome was unexpectedly positive for her. Later, her lawyer addressed the waiting press and explained the situation. The court had dismissed the murder charge against Doan, but she had pleaded guilty to a lesser offense voluntarily causing hurt with dangerous means and received a 3-year prison sentence. While the sentence was not a full acquittal, it was a far better result than what she had initially faced. In the end, Doan did not serve the entire sentence. She was released roughly a month after the verdict. Doan returned to her country, Vietnam, surrounded by cameras, with dozens of journalists waiting for her at the airport. All eyes were on her. You could say she finally got the fame she had been looking for, but definitely not in the way she wanted or could have ever imagined. She went back to her country and her family. And the same thing happened with Siti. She returned to Indonesia and went back to her parents' home. And so, at least, the story of these two women ended with a happy ending.